Good morning, everyone. I'm Steve Rosansky, President and CEO of the Newport Beach Chamber of Commerce. I want to welcome you to our June edition of Wake Up Newport. Hopefully our last Zoom meeting here at the Chamber for Wake Up Newport. We're still waiting to get the go-ahead from the Newport Beach main library to go back to the Friends Room. But we've got a great program for you this morning. A lot going on in the county from a legal standpoint, and we have our local District Attorney Todd Spitzer with us. Before we get to that, I would like to just take a moment to introduce our series sponsor, First Republic Bank. This morning I have with me Tyler Parker. He's located down here, actually stone's throw from my office. And then he's brought with him Brian Norcross this morning. He's up in Long Beach, but soon to be relocated, maybe to Newport Beach. He's going to tell us a little bit about some of the products that they are offering this month. So I'm going to let you guys take it away.
Perfect. Steve, thank you so much for having me again. We're happy to be a part of the series. So again, I'm Tyler Parker, and I'm the preferred banking office manager for the First Republic Bank in Corona Del Mar, currently working out of the Newport Beach office, a literal stone's throw from the Chamber building that direction. And it is my pleasure to introduce my colleague here, Brian Norcross, an account executive with our Eagle Lending program, to discuss a product that we have that really does set us apart from the competition, the personal line of credit. So with that, Brian, I'll turn it over to you to discuss some details.
Awesome. Thank you, Tyler. Yes, so I live up in Long Beach, but I work out of our Newport Beach office as well. So when we do go back in, I'll be there. But just to kind of briefly touch on what Tyler mentioned. So one of our newest product offerings that I think is really a great product for virtually anybody is our personal line of credit. So the bank is now offering lines that can range between $60,000 to $350,000. Unsecured lines, and these can be used for kind of a wide variety of things. Kind of the main things that we're looking at right now are refinancing student loans, minor improvements to your primary residence, auto refinancing and purchases, medical expenses, dental expenses, and then just kind of big events. Some people are planning weddings, so that's going to be a big focus once COVID passes us by. The really great thing is these don't necessarily have to be used to refinance debt. So if people are looking for just open lines of credit, we can do up to 100,000 of just an open line. And like I said, it's a great way to set yourself up to improve your house or just have it as emergency funds. Always happy to chat more, and I'll put my contact information in the chat. But that's just really high level, and we think, like I said, it's a product that can help a wide variety of people.
Great. Well, thank you, Brian. I'll be calling you soon here. I could use an extra $100,000, just kind of at my discretion. You never know. Hey, the wedding thing, though, I don't know you're going to have too many takers of that. It's impossible to book a wedding venue now that the hotels are opening up. But, appreciate you coming down today, and thank you both for sponsoring our series. And so now let's move on. So today's kind of a little bit of a tearful day, I guess. It could be tears of joy or tears of sadness, depending on how you're looking at it. But Rush Hill, who's been my partner in crime here for the last few years with Wake Up Newport and our Government Affairs Committee, he's been head of the Civic Affairs Committee, is passing the baton on today. And so I'm going to turn it over to Rush, and Rush is going to introduce our new chair, Alberto. Before I do that, though, I would remind you, once the program starts and Todd's going to be making a 20 to 25-minute presentation about a lot of various different things. If you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A box, not the chat box. Please put them in the Q&A box. And at the conclusion of his remarks, he's going to stick around and answer some of these questions. And he's promised me that no question is too difficult. So we might have to put him to the test. And with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Rush, and I'll be back at the very end of the program for some concluding remarks. Thank you. Take it away, Rush.
Well, I would like to thank you, Steve. I've been always forced to do that at this program. A great opportunity. I've enjoyed my time here and with governmental affairs, and I think that we provide a great service for the city. And I want to know that my replacement, we gave a lot of serious thought We actually had to go find the heaviest weight we could find that had great authority and capabilities, because the primary responsibility of the co-host position is to keep the other host in some sort of line that doesn't embarrass all of us too terribly much. So with that, I think we're going to be very pleased with the capabilities. We actually tried to convince him to run for governor, but when that didn't work, we then convinced him to step into to governmental affairs. So I'm more than pleased and proud to introduce you to Albert Sandov, the Senior Director of Community Government Relations for the University of California at Irvine. And in his role, Alberto is responsible for leading, planning, and managing UCI's community and governmental relation programs that foster increased awareness, understanding, and support for UC Irvine's mission, vision, and accomplishments. Prior to his current role on the campus, he served as the Director of Advocacy and State Government Relations. Before joining the Anteater team in 2015, he worked for Boeing, and he was a representative of the company and testified before US Congress, state and local governments on key federal defense programs, as well as legislative, regulatory, and land use issues affecting the company. His turn in the private sector followed 20 years of service working in the United States House of Representatives. In that capacity, he served as Congressman Dana Rohrabacher, District Deputy in Huntington Beach, and his focus areas were aerospace, defense industry, technology, cyberspace, and domestic policy. Prior to his service with Congressman Rohrabacher, Alberto served as senior field representative to former Congressman Robert Dornan. In November of 2009, Alberto traveled to his parents' native Honduras in Central America to join the Washington Senior Observers Group to participate as international election observers. The group was invited by the Honduras Supreme Electoral Tribunal to observe and support the democratic process and ensure the free, fair, and transparent voting process. Alberto received his bachelor's degree in political science from California State University in Fullerton, and a master's degree of science at the National Defense University in Fort McNair, Washington, D.C. He serves on the board of directors of Newport Beach Chamber of Commerce. He's been a good friend and an assistant and participant in that organization. He also is on the Orange County Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. And he's trustee of the World Affairs Council of Orange County. Alberto and his wife, Rachel, have 4 children and reside in Rossmore, California. So I hope you can see from that we truly have found a heavyweight to step in and do a much better job where I have failed consistently in trying to keep my co-host, the business mayor, the almost constantly honorable Steve Rosansky in line. So Alberto, it's all yours at this point. I am over and out.
Thank you, Rush. Rush, these are big shoes to fill. I hope to make you proud. Thank you for the book of insults for Steve. I'll be sure to use those as time goes on. But thank you, everyone. I appreciate you all being here this morning to hear from our DA. So I'll do a quick introduction and you can take it away, Todd. Orange County District Attorney Todd Spitzer has a long-standing reputation as an advocate for victims' rights. He chaired the groundbreaking campaign for Proposition 9, Marsy's Law, the nation's most comprehensive Victims' Bill of Rights, and served as state co-chair for Proposition 83, the nation's toughest sex offender punishment and control law, as well as Proposition 69, which requires the collection of DNA samples from all felons. DA Spitzer also joint authored Megan's Law on the Internet, the landmark legislation requiring the release of public information related to sex offenders. And as a former deputy and assistant district attorney, he handled complex criminal matters while managing line prosecutors. Todd Spitzer has dedicated his life to keeping families safe and was inspired to dedicate his career to public service. as an Orange County supervisor, former California State Assembly member, and now as the Orange County District Attorney. Ladies and gentlemen, Orange County's DA, Todd Spitzer.
Well, good morning, Alberto. Thank you very much, and congratulations on your new assignment. I know you're going to do an amazing job, and I've been friends and known and served with Rush on the Transportation Corridor Agency for many years, and I really appreciate his leadership in public life and private sector life as well. So I'm really glad to be here, and I'm going to talk in some generalities this morning, but I'm also going to tailor my comments specifically to Newport Beach. We're going to load a PowerPoint here in a minute and share the screen, but I want to update you a little bit about what's going on with the shooting and death of Aiden Leos. He's a 6-year-old that was killed a week ago. It'll be 2 weeks tomorrow on the 55 freeway northbound at the 5. And we are working very, very closely with the California Highway Patrol. They're the lead agency. We're obviously trying to catch the killers. We believe there were 2 occupants of that vehicle, a female driver and a male right front seat passenger, who after an exchange between 2 vehicles, the victim vehicle driven by Aiden's mother, Aiden was in the right rear passenger seat in a booster seat. And the occupant of the suspect vehicle, the right front passenger, fired 1 bullet. It hit the trunk area of the victim vehicle. It went through the trunk, went through the passenger compartment, and through Aiden's body, right through that car seat. And he was killed, and he succumbed to his injuries at the road right there on the side of the freeway in his mother's arms. There's been a real outpouring. It's really been a national conversation. The reward is up to $450,000, and I was informed last night there may be another $50,000 coming in today. If that's so, that would put it at $500,000, which is an unprecedented amount. I mean, I've never seen this kind of money. What some of you may recall, when 3 inmates escaped from the Orange County Jail for very serious crimes. One of them, a guy named Nairi, you remember, they took a person who was a marijuana, like a dope dealer, allegedly, and took him out to the desert and dismembered him. Well, they cut off his penis, and he escaped from the jail. He was found in the Haight-Ashbury in San Francisco with one of his other accomplices. And a homeless man spotted them and turned them into the police. San Francisco police took him into custody. I actually was the one that put up the $100,000 reward. As a member of the Board of Supervisors, the board voted on my motion to do that. And I presented the check to that homeless man in San Francisco. And I was so worried about handing him $100,000 that I made him deposit it in his Wells Fargo account. And I was in the bank with him when he did it. And he told me a funny story. He's like, yeah, my ex-wife called me and asked me if we could get back together. You know, $500,000, that's a life-changer amount of money. I want to thank our sponsors today as well for doing what they do for our community. And hopefully you'll do business with First Republic Bank. So thank you to Tyler and Brian. I want to also update you. Alberto's on the call. He's now the chair. Some of you saw the Orange County Register this morning. I think it's on the front page of the local section. The University of California Irvine Law School sued me and my office over our local DNA lab. That was started by my predecessor, and the idea is that for low-level crimes, in exchange for your giving of a DNA swab, we will consider dismissing the charges after you do, in some cases, a low-level counseling program or diversion. The idea is that the greatest deterrent to future criminality is somebody knowing we have your DNA, because everybody knows today that we solve so many crimes by the advent of DNA. Some people think that's coercive, that you're taking somebody's private matter, if you will, in exchange for a guilty plea. We are. I mean, we're doing it with consent. We're doing it through very, very open and transparent paperwork that explains to the person. And anybody today that understands 23andMe or any of the DNA websites, you know that law enforcement goes in and searches those websites, and people put their DNA in there voluntarily. Sometimes law enforcement gets a search warrant, sometimes they don't. That's how we caught the Golden State Killer. The Golden State Killer was California's worst mass murder, 17 murders in California, 50 rapes that we know of. He killed 4 people here in Orange County, and I took his guilty plea. I was assisted by Pat Dixon, who is my special prosecutor. He's married, of course, to Diane Dixon, who's on the city council, and Pat was a career prosecutor with the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office. He retired, and I snapped him up, and he is working for me doing special projects. And he really babysat that case along with a lot of other people. Deborah Lloyd, a prosecutor as well, and just a whole team of amazing investigators and prosecutors. And we solved that crime in conjunction with other DAs throughout the state who had crimes in their county. So DNA is a very powerful tool. I'm not walking away from it. It helps keep our county safe. You'll see in that Orange County Register article, we have solved murder, we have solved rape crimes because people gave their DNA. And so this is not a numbers game. So a lot of the argument is, well, you have 180,000 samples and you've only solved, I don't know, fill in the blank, X number of crimes. We use that database for leads. We help the police departments when they have a crime scene. We have machines that can process DNA from a crime scene. And if there's enough of the sample to give part of it to us and the other part to the Orange County Crime Lab. And the reason we don't want to take the entire sample is because we need the crime lab to follow all the official protocols under state law so that we can admit that evidence into court. So we don't want to jeopardize a former court case, but if there's enough of a blood sample, urine sample, saliva to split that sample, preserve the forensic sample for testing by the crime lab, but allow us to test it quickly, I can give them a result within 2 to 3 hours. Whereas the Orange County Crime Lab may take months. I can give them a result in hours and let them know if there's a sample in the California database, which contains all felons, and my local database. So it's a very powerful tool, and I'm not going to give it up without a fight. So the judge, the UCI lawsuit, the judge agreed with us that it's completely legal. There's no coercion, and UCI Law School was non-suited. That means they were basically kicked out of court, and they're going to amend their complaint, and I hope they don't. I hope they drop it. It's an important tool for California. It's an important tool for Orange County. Some of you may be on Spectrum TV. Last night I was on Alex Cohen's show, and I'm sure it'll repeat, or you can get it on YouTube. But I talked about some things I'm going to talk about today, but I challenged George Gascon. He is the current district attorney of Los Angeles County, to a debate. I think he's ruining Los Angeles County. I think he's jeopardizing public safety. I think we're all in trouble with him as the elected district attorney of Los Angeles. And I'm going to talk about that with more specificity in a couple minutes. I want to talk to you, and I'm only doing this because this is the greater Newport Beach area, but I think it's a very important case that some of you may be paying attention to. And that's the Robichaux Riley case. That's the case commonly referred to as the Newport Beach surgeon case. Many of you know my predecessor filed very, very, very serious felony charges, mostly of a sex crimes nature, and alleged that there were thousands of videos that were in possession of the district attorney and the government that showed that there were women who were incapacitated, who were sexually assaulted. They had been charged with kidnapping for drugging one victim at a local restaurant bar in Newport Beach and taking her without consent back to their condominium and attempting to, or actually sexually assaulting. That case, I had declared a conflict. I asked the Attorney General to come in and review it after I was, about a year after I was elected. There were problems with the case and I was very, very concerned. I was very concerned about my ability to be perceived as objective because that was an issue that I raised during the campaign, this case. I will refresh your memory that the Newport Beach Police Department had 3 victim police reports of women who complained to them that they had been sexually assaulted. And the Newport Beach Police investigated those cases, could not close those investigations for a variety of reasons, lack of evidence, lack of cooperation, and never submitted those cases to the district attorney for review. So the original 3 were never submitted for review. They were resurrected from an investigator inside the district attorney's office. And then there was a press conference, about 1,000 videos of women incapacitated. And as a result of that, 4 more women came forward and said they were victims. My recusal motion by the Attorney General was not accepted. They told me to continue to prosecute the case. It resulted in a very, very messy litigation in Harbor Court in Newport Beach. Judge Jones, then the presiding judge, believed there was enough evidence to go forward, and he referred the case to the Attorney General for prosecution and review. The Attorney General spent almost a year reviewing the case, and they determined and represented to Judge Bromberg, who you all know, that there was insufficient evidence to proceed. They moved to dismiss the gun allegations. There were some assault weapons that were found on the premises at the time of the search warrant. They had indicated they would not proceed on all of the sex count charges except for one, and they had a different theory on one victim, but they were willing to drop the kidnapping, which, by the way, is a life case, life in prison, which are obviously incredibly serious charges. So the Attorney General has agreed with the Orange County District Attorney's assessment. They're independent. We didn't collaborate. We didn't have any meetings. We didn't discuss the case, and they did it independent. I had over 10 attorneys in the District Attorney's office review the case, and they all agreed unanimously we could not prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. The Attorney General's office had 4 attorneys and 2 investigators, and they agreed unanimously, per what they said in court, they could not prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. The new Attorney General, Mr. Bonta, was briefed and also agreed with his prosecutor's recommendation. Where the case stands now is Judge Bromberg has asked for briefings from the parties. I'm not a party, I'm out of the case. And the case is due back in court, I think sometime later this month. I don't know the date off the top of my head, but I wanted you all to know that while it's been extremely high profile for Newport Beach, it got worldwide attention. The decision and the recommendation of the Orange County District Attorney's Office was corroborated and confirmed by the California Attorney General. And we'll just see where the litigation goes. But I think you were owed my explanation of that case, since you are residents or at least do business in Newport Beach. And obviously it's been the talk of the town. And I would imagine it's going to remain the talk of the town. Jose, can we cue up the slides, please? So let me just give you a little bit of background, and then hopefully we'll open it up for questions in the chat. And I know Alberto will moderate that. So you all need to understand that you live in a county which has the 3rd largest district attorney's office in the state of California. We go back and forth with San Diego. San Diego also has its own city attorney. So the city attorney prosecutes a lot of cases. So we probably prosecute more cases in San Diego, but they have slightly larger population. The biggest, of course, is the LA DA's office. We're the 6th largest in the nation. So it's a big deal what we do in Orange County, and it has a lot of influence in California and across the country. We employ about 900 employees, 300 lawyers, 150 sworn investigators that assist the prosecutors in the prosecution of our cases. We at any one time have about 20,000 active cases, but we review about 70,000 cases a year. Next slide. You can read this quickly for yourself, but the mission of the District Attorney's Office is really primarily twofold. It is, I lost my screen, so just give me a second. Okay, I'm back. It's really to protect the public and protect our community. So as we get into the discussion about the future of police and prosecutors, I want you to know that the safety of our county, the safety of our state, and the safety of our nation is at stake. It's not hyperbole and is not an understatement that there are people that want to destroy our system of public safety. You've heard it all: en masse incarceration, defund the police and the carceral system. Police cannot be trusted. Prosecutors are too closely aligned with the police. They're not independent. They do the bidding of the police. There was a bill that just passed off the Senate floor in our state Senate yesterday, prohibiting, it's unconstitutional, but they're going to try anyway, prohibiting prosecutors from accepting campaign contributions from police unions. They want to dry up all the money that law and order DAs get, but they don't want to stop the money that they get from George Soros, who is trying to undermine all of the public safety in our nation. Next slide. So we have a $150 million budget, and we go into budget hearings next week with the Board of Supervisors. Next slide. So I'm obviously not going to go through the org chart, but what I want you to do is it's just to visually have you appreciate the diversity of and the issues that we deal with in this office. It's huge. You can see on the far left, this is our police agency, 150 sworn personnel. We have a training unit, operations 2. I'm the public administrator, which means my office is responsible for administering and distributing property of an individual who dies intestate. That means without a will and with no heirs. So we have to figure out how to distribute the assets of an estate where somebody dies and there's no one to take responsibility for their estate. We do appeals in our writs and appeals. We have a conviction integrity unit. That means even if a case is adjudicated and we get a conviction, we are always willing to look at whether we made a mistake or whether the case with new evidence needs to be reopened. I started a mental health and recidivism reduction unit. That means I am deeply invested and committed to helping people who are mentally ill and who are addicted to alcohol and drugs. When there is a connection between their criminality and their abuses. We have courts in 4 locations in the county: Fullerton, North Court; Westminster, West Court; Harbor Court in Newport Beach, on Jamboree and DuPont. Well, it's just down, Jamboree and DuPont. It's close to that. It's just down from there. I said Jamboree and DuPont because that's where my yoga studio is. And then we have the Santa Ana Courthouse, which is our main courthouse in Santa Ana. We have a science and technology unit. I talked about DNA. We are on the cutting edge of using science to solve crimes. And it is making a huge difference in protecting the public here in Orange County. We do family protection. We enforce and deal with protective orders, domestic violence, human trafficking. We have a very, very serious problem in our county with human trafficking. And it's largely because we're a county of means, and we have conventions and tourism and a lot of population that is here temporarily. and it's a magnet for human trafficking and for sex trafficking. But also this involves the abuse of domestic workers. So I think you may recall we had a case where a person had been brought here, I think from Iran or Middle East, and she was being exploited by a family who lived in Irvine. She was slave labor, and we prosecuted that family. Of course, we do homicide, special prosecutions. I prosecute politicians, city managers, elected officials, candidates for office. We investigate election fraud. We handle very, very, very sensitive, high-profile cases. Some of you may not know, I do not endorse local elected officials. And the reason is my office is nonpartisan, and I don't do it because I have to investigate politicians. My predecessor endorsed in the past, and he would have to recuse himself and bring in the Attorney General. I think that's an abdication of my responsibility. So I'm not endorsing in campaigns. And we have the sex crimes unit, which I talked about a little bit with Robichaux. And then of course we have our support staff who do a phenomenal job. And then you can see Pat Dixon, he reports directly to me. He's up here. And then Sean Nelson, former county supervisor, is my chief assistant. Next slide. So let's go to the courts, Jose. Let's go to the slide about all the different courts, please. Sorry about that. This is a could be a very long. Okay, so so what I want you all to appreciate is when I started as a prosecutor in 1990, so 32 years ago, the way we were trained was go out, do as many trials as you can, be a trial warrior, get as many convictions as you can, as long as it's ethical, get the highest sentence you can, as long as that's ethical, and move on to the next case. That is not an appropriate or enlightened way to be a prosecutor. Our role is not to get convictions. That should ring a bell with the Robichaux case. I will not walk away from prosecuting somebody who violated the law, but I will be damned if you're going to have your district attorney be somebody who will get a conviction at any cost, irrespective of the evidence. I will not prosecute people who I do not believe I can prove they're guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. And that's really the Robichaux case in a nutshell. High profile, has all the makings of drama. There's a podcast about it. It got worldwide attention. I cannot prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. The Attorney General agrees, cannot prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. Independent corroboration. We don't do that in Orange County. We do not railroad people. And I think we're keeping Orange County safer than any of our neighboring counties. And I'll go back to that in a minute. I want you to appreciate from this slide all the things we do to help people who find themselves in trouble. The homeless, we have a homeless court. We have a driving under the influence court. It's very, very prominent, especially in Harbor Court. We have drug court. We have military diversion. I feel very strongly about this. I spoke at 3 events on Monday for Memorial Day. If you go serve our country and you're fortunate enough to come home, you're gonna have some afflictions, whether it's PTSD or addiction or whatever. A lot of people come home and they're pretty messed up. It's our responsibility as a society to take care of those who took care of us. And I go out of my way to try to fashion a disposition that's tailored for that individual person's needs, to try to help them help themselves. And if they do, they could get a dismissal potentially of their criminal charges and start their life all over again and get past their affliction. Okay, I hate to do this to you, Jose. Go back to the Chesa Bowden slide, that series on, and then I'll open it up for questions. So as he's finding that slide, let me tell you what's going on in the United States. There's obviously attack on the police. Do we have to engage in police reform? Yes, we do. We absolutely need to engage in police reform. But you could, if you, yeah, go there, you got it, great. And I'm all for that. For example, let me give you an example, National Registry. If you have a bad cop who's committed bad acts in the jurisdiction, right there, perfect, one more, perfect. They should absolutely be held to answer for their crimes or misdeeds, and they shouldn't be able to float to another police department and start all over again. The George Floyd bill that's in Congress right now, carried by Karen Bass, who was my speaker when I was in the assembly, I support certain provisions of that bill. And a national registry is one of them. But let me tell you what's happening. Chesa Boudin's the district attorney of San Francisco. He was a public defender. Criminal attorneys or public defenders who want to be the DA, that should be a natural question for all of you. Chesa's parents are in prison. His mom got paroled. His father's still in prison for murdering a police officer. They were part of the Weather Underground. He was a child when they were part of the Weather Underground. They took over, tried to take over a Brinks armored car, and a police officer was killed. And I think his dad got life without the possibility of parole. So now he's absolutely set on getting his father out of prison. He does not believe in the death penalty. He does not believe in bail. 10 CVS's or Walgreens are closing in San Francisco because he won't prosecute theft. As you know, theft is now $950. There's no felony for theft if you have a prior conviction for theft. That was taken away. He is ruining San Francisco. Go to San Francisco. Don't take my word for it. It's not the place it used to be. I went to law school in San Francisco. I have my master's degree from Berkeley in public policy. I've spent years in the Bay Area. That place is out of control. And they should be ashamed of themselves. And they want to do it in Orange County. Next slide. They're walking away from the death penalty for cop killers. They don't want to prosecute individuals and hold them accountable. They obviously are against the death penalty. We could argue about that all day long, but they don't even want to enforce life without the possibility of parole. I will tell you, there are some people who commit such egregious offenses against society and victims, they should never get out of prison. If you go back and watch my interview last night with Alex Cohen from Spectrum, she cited a Los Angeles Times front page story of Gascon. Let's go to the next slide. One more. George Gascon was elected. He defeated a Democrat, African-American career prosecutor, Jackie Lacey. He came from San Francisco that he ruined, and now he's trying to ruin Los Angeles County. He's trying to ruin Los Angeles County with his progressive policies, and he now wants to ruin Orange County. Okay, so they're taking it county by county. They went after San Diego, they lost, they're going to try again. They went after Sacramento County DA, they lost, but they're going to try again. They're not going to give up. And this is a national movement. And it should scare you because Len Krasner is the DA of Philadelphia. He never was a prosecutor. His claim to fame before he became the Philadelphia DA was he sued police departments. He just got reelected 65-35. That is a rout. That is a landslide. And so he was reelected even though he has all these anti-police soft on crime. I get it, we're not Philadelphia, but don't think it can't happen here. So Gascon is turning the entire criminal justice system on its head. And the point I wanted to make that I made with Alex last night on our show, George Gascon believes that people who are criminals are actually the new victim. So he's not saying that crime victims, the person that the crime is committed against, is not a victim, but he's saying the person who committed the crime against them is also a victim because they either grew up poor, they grew up without two parents in the home, they grew up as latchkey kids, they didn't get their education. In other words, he's blaming socioeconomic reasons for why individuals are not culpable. And my point with Alex, if we don't hold people accountable for their free choices, then we are simply allowing chaos to permeate in our urban cores, which is what's happening. Our inner cities, homicide is up 300% in Los Angeles. the murder rate in LA and San Francisco is out of control. And a good friend of mine who's a very, very liberal Democrat, Paul Koretz, he represents Hollywood and he's on the city council. He asked Chief Moore, why are murders out of control? Well, George Gascon disbanded his hardcore gang unit. And do you know that a lot of the murders in LA are gang member against gang member, black against black? And so here, Jackie Lacey, who really you would think, right, would absolutely fit is the prototype of a person that LA would want as their DA. She got routed. She got thrown out of office. Okay, so with that, Alberto, I guess I'm going to kick it back to you, and or whoever, Steve, or whoever's moderating the chat.
Well, thanks, Todd. Appreciate that. There are a couple of questions in the chat. The first from Phil Betancourt reads, alleged...
Phil Betancourt, can I screen any of these calls, or do I? Hi, Phil.
We'll do all the screening. Just
alleged police misconduct is almost a daily focus of broadcast news, especially. As a former LAPD reserve officer and strong public safety advocate, please help us understand the role of the district attorney under California law in such often charged incidents.
Yeah, so Phil, hey, I really appreciate you being on, and I haven't seen you in a long time. I hope you're doing well, my friend. Look, this argument, look, I prosecute police officers in this county. We had a big issue with the failure to book evidence by the Orange County Sheriff's Department. I prosecuted and got convictions against 2 deputy sheriffs. They were fired. I had to go to the grand jury and get another one indicted. And we're going to end up doing that trial because he won't plead guilty, and he got fired. I review all the uses of force and officer-involved shootings. We had a shooting in Placentia this week. I'm reviewing and will be coming out with my recommendations on the killing of Kurt Reinhold. He was a homeless man in San Clemente. I have another officer-involved shooting, an individual named Hernandez. That's Fullerton Police. I am literally reviewing and releasing reports of custodial deaths and officer-involved shootings. If I believed a police officer violated the constitutional rights of a person and used deadly force when it was not warranted, I would prosecute them. Irrespective of my background, one of the reasons I became a volunteer police officer was to be a better prosecutor, not to be a better police officer. I wanted to understand what happens so I could explain and tell the story as a trial lawyer in the courtroom. People do not understand what the police do. They do not understand. Look, a sergeant was killed in Yucca Valley this week in San Bernardino, and everybody called it was a motorcycle chase. And the motorcycle was abandoned, and they went to look at the motorcycle, and there were shots fired from somewhere in a field, and the sergeant was killed. Don't call anything routine, right? You hear all the time, routine car stop. There's nothing routine about doing a car stop or being a police officer. So I'm troubled. Now, on the other hand, do we need to do more in society to help individuals who find themselves afflicted? They're born in a particular way into a community where it's more difficult. Yes, of course. That's why I became a high school teacher. I taught high school in the inner city. I taught at Roosevelt High School, 4th and Soto, okay, right in the heart of the barrio. I was a cop at Hollenbeck, 1st and Soto, right in the heart of the barrio. And my belief is you give people opportunities, and it's education that pulls you out of the barrio. It's not saying after you commit a crime or murder somebody that you're not responsible for your actions. So I have a huge philosophical different perspective than Mr. Gascon. And that's the key question for Orange County. Do you want to go in a direction of Los Angeles and just look at what's going on up there? Just drive up, go north on the 5 and cross into Norwalk and ask me if it doesn't look different. Drive all the way from Norwalk to the spaghetti of the 5, the 101, and the 10. You're right there in the heart of East LA where I was a teacher and a cop. And look to the right and look to the left and look at the old Sears Roebuck and ask yourself, is this the way you want Orange County to look? I'm telling you the answer is no. So thank you for that question, Steve.
Very good. We also have a question here from, excuse me, Steve McNally. And as you're well aware, and virtually everybody in Orange County, and certainly up in LA County is aware, homelessness, drug abuse, things like that are a significant problem, with people camping in the streets and crime. So the question here is, he's interested in mental health diversion. And I think you talked a little bit about diversion, but could the District Attorney Spitzer discuss if he feels the collaborative courts, mental health, substance abuse, homelessness, need expansion? What's the county's process and commitment to the healthcare agency, public defender, and district attorney to penal code? I'm not sure what the section is. Hopefully you do. 1001.36 mental health diversion.
So I'm very supportive of mental health diversion, but I don't, that there's a law, and it's a very unfortunate what the legislature did. They said, no matter what courtroom you're in, you can work out a mental health diversion program with the individual judge you're in front of. There's no requirement for what kind of program. There's no requirement of how often you need to report back, supervision. A judge is not equipped to have that kind of oversight. It was a very short-sighted bill by the legislature. It needs to be strongly modeled after the collaborative court, where you have a judge who's an expert on mental health and has support staff, social workers, psychologists, veterans affairs, other institutional representatives who have expertise, who can model an intensive program and tailor it based upon that person's needs and background. So we are often opposing mental health diversion in an individual judge's court because there's no oversight. And I don't like the lack of supervision, but we're all in and we staff full time the mental health courts. And on the expansion, the courts would love to expand mental health, but courts now are state agencies. They don't get their funding from the county. So if they want to expand, they have to get the resources from the state to pay the additional judges to oversee those courts. And also all the support that goes with individual courtrooms. So, and also they need the physical plant space, which is also a state function, and they have not been able to expand those courts. So the courts that we do have now are incredibly full, the caseloads are huge, and the staff and the judges are overworked. So we do absolutely need to expand it, which I'm glad you raised this, because in this whole argument of defund the police, the answer is not to defund the police. The answer is to fully fund the police, but provide the services and the programs we need to help the people when we have them, what I call as a captive audience. When they're doing jail time, they should be getting their programs. When they're in court on a diversion or outpatient, they should be getting their programs. We need more resources to focus on that.
Very good.
If I can, Steve, take the prerogative of the chair and ask a question that may seem simple, but I saw that in Newport Beach and elsewhere in Orange County and around Southern California, the theft of catalytic converters is a big deal. I've got a 17-year-old who just bought herself a 2012 little car. And, I'm worried about her being out on the streets, but I'm also worried about it being out in front of our house, having her catalytic converter stolen. So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we hosted, okay, so let me tell you why catalytic converters are so valuable. It's not for the catalytic converter. It's for the contents, the internal, there's a honeycomb in there that allows the exhaust from the engine block to go through this honeycomb inside the bigger part that you'll see. There's an in, There's a bigger tube, if you will, kind of looks like a mushroom in some cases. And then it narrows down and goes out as exhaust. In order to clean that exhaust so it can go out into the air with less carbon emissions, don't ask me the name, I'm gonna screw this up, but I think it's palladium and there's some other periodic table element, okay, from chemistry. Those precious metals that are in there are worth thousands of dollars an ounce, but there's obviously small amounts, but it's necessary to convert and break down the exhaust. So what they do is they cut the catalytic converter off in the dark of the night. They then take them and they smash out the insides and they mine out the precious metals, and then they sell the precious metals. It's not because there's this huge demand for catalytic converters on the open market. So what we're doing is, it's weird, when a catalytic converter is manufactured, there's no identifying marks on that catalytic converter by the manufacturer that's unique to the vehicle. So what we're doing is, I just hosted with Huntington Beach Police a catalytic converter engraving event where they jack your car up and they put the last 4 or 5 numbers of your VIN number that is unique to your car into the catalytic converter. And the reason that's important is we will catch these people in the act, right? And we'll do a car stop, police will, and they'll see 4 or 5 catalytic converters in the back of the truck bed, but there's no identifying marks. So there's no way to, even though somebody, they're still asleep, right? And they haven't reported it, but even assuming you could link up, Alberto's recently daughter stolen catalytic converter with the one that was just seized from a car stop. Yeah, I could go match it up and, see if it was exact cuttings from the hacksaw or all that, but it would be so much easier, wouldn't it? If you had the VIN number, then I could prove it came from that recent stolen catalytic converter. We're doing another one with Buena Park Police coming up in the next couple of weeks. And I would urge all of you, I think you should call the chief or the detective bureau. Newport Beach should do one. You also might, when your car gets jacked up or you get an oil change and you drive in and they're below you in the bay, the service bay, you might ask them if they would start an etching program, like the Jiffy Lubes or whatever. And that way they could do it while your oil's being changed. I think it would be a great public service from the oil changing entities. And I'm working with the Orange County Auto Dealers Association, John Sackerson and others. He's the executive director. To every time you go in for a service for your car, they will etch your catalytic converter.
Well, the police chief is on the call this morning, so hopefully he'll take your advice to heart. And I did Google it. It's platinum, palladium, and rhodium that are the precious metals that are used in construction.
So I have a platinum ring, and it's way more expensive than gold.
Yeah.
Okay. My wife reminds me of that. So yeah, platinum is super expensive, super hard.
Your wife's way more expensive than the ring, I'll bet.
Good point.
So we have another question here in the Q&A. It says, thank you for your presentation. It's from Danny Murphy, one of our chamber members. When you talk about the LA and San Francisco DAs having dangerous policies, which he agrees with, who is the they that is trying to push those policies on other counties throughout California by supporting progressive candidates? So who are these people behind getting these people elected?
Yeah, so look, this is a very serious, well-funded movement throughout our country. And it's largely funded by George Soros. George Soros was doing this basically on his own. And he funded the campaign to take out Summer Steffen, sorry. She's the DA of San Diego County. And like in the ads, right, it has to have the disclosure paid for by. They've gotten very smart. They're no longer Soros is kind of a magnet for criticism. If you listen to Tucker Carlson or watch Fox News, they're always attacking George Soros. There's a belief that society needs to be destroyed, that it's not just defund the police. There is a movement that actually believes we should eliminate the police. The same elements of that movement believe that we should not have prisons or jails. They say they want to end the carceral system. They want to completely destroy our institutions to the ground. And then they want to build them up the way they believe it should be instead of the way it is today. Do I believe, and I'm glad you told me the chief's on, I know the chief and I completely agree that police officers need to be accountable and they need to be held responsible. But police officers also do things that none of us, the rest of us do, which is they make life and death decisions in a split millisecond. A shooting occurs oftentimes without any preparation. I don't know if you saw the video of the police officers that responded to the community with the 2 kids yesterday. I think a 14-year-old and a 12-year-old, something like that, a boy and a girl. They were armed with weapons. They broke into the house. They were shooting at the police. The police used tremendous judgment. You can hear the police officer saying to himself, it's picked up on his body-worn camera, please don't do this. Like begging under his breath. Who wants to shoot a child, for God's sakes? I think they ended up having to shoot one of the children, and that was what subdued the situation. But police are in this very unique position. I would urge you, if you're interested, I'm sure the chief can set it up. We have simulators, and you could have a chamber event where you go into the simulator and you have a scenario and you have a laser gun. And I used to practice on this all the time. And sometimes you'd have a bad shooting. Sometimes police make mistakes. And when I evaluate that, the question is, was it reasonable under the circumstances by a reasonable police officer under the same or similar circumstances? The test is not, was it reasonable for Officer Spitzer to shoot if Steve Rosansky, the civilian, would not have shot? That's not the test. It's a reasonable police officer under the same or similar circumstances. So that law is changing in California and is changing. It used to be reasonable force. The legislature now has it evaluated as necessary force. There are people who have no experience in police work that believe that you should throw a crayon at a suspect who's armed with a gun. Throw a crayon at him, see if that works. Throw a Kleenex, take your handkerchief and wave it up, a white flag, and say, okay, I give up. Please put down your gun, Mr. Suspect. There are people who have no clue what they're talking about that are making laws in California today. And if once you understand that the reason we have so much dissension in our community is because there's a very strong belief that the way society is operating today it must absolutely be torn down, not changed, not reformed, torn down. And I'm obviously very much against what's going on. And I'm giving you clear-cut examples. Krasner in Philadelphia, George Gascon in LA, and Chesa Bowden in San Francisco. You don't want to become those jurisdictions.
Well, we actually have an excellent program run by the police department called the Citizens Police Academy here. I'm a graduate myself back in 2002, I think, and you do it's a number of weeks, and you're exposed to all different types of policing activity. And one that always sticks in my mind is they have a police car out in the parking lot, and it's dark and it's at night, and they have 4 actors in the car. I think they're police volunteers. And you're supposed to be the police officer with the flashlight in your hand going up to do a traffic stop. And it's probably was the scariest thing I've ever done. And I knew it was just a simulation, but to see them moving around in the car and grabbing for things, and it really gives you a hearty respect for what officers do day in and day out. As you say, there is no routine stop. I mean, anything could turn into a situation. And so anybody who's on the call is interested in that program, police run it twice a year. There's also another one for teenagers to take as well. So it's a great course. We're just about out of time here. I did notice, I did want to ask you about one thing though. I noticed on your org chart there that there was a number of vacancies. Are you filling those? Are you having trouble finding people to work in the DA's office, or is just the chart out of date?
Just a couple of things, and I know the chief, all chiefs are going to have this problem. Just ask yourself this question: when you're under attack, when you used to wear the white hat, Police officers had the white hat, DAs had the white hat. When you used to wear the white hat, when I started the profession, man, the prosecutors stood up in court. We were so well respected. The public loved us. Juries loved us. We could almost do no wrong here in Orange County. And today we're under attack. So, it's very difficult to recruit and get people to go into law enforcement when they don't feel they have the public support. Chiefs are retiring, police officers are being I would say it's not a good state for recruiting. Do people still want to be prosecutors as attorneys? Yes, they do. And we get long lines of people, but I want to hire the best of the best. And Orange County deserves it. We have vacancies because, as you know, Steve, the retirement benefits in the past have been very generous. And when you hit my age, you can retire with, a very large portion of your salary for the rest of your life. And so when people can get out and still, be financially set, there's no incentive for people to remain working. So I think the pension generosity in conjunction with why would I want to do this work anymore is creating that kind of the perfect storm to make it difficult for us to get really, really good people to stay in law enforcement.
Well, I saw one of the vacancies was open slot for government affairs. So maybe Alberto and I need to polish up our resumes and get them into you.
Anytime, we'd often consider, but I want you to know you face really stiff competition.
Okay. Throw down the gauntlet, no problem. All right, well, I again want to thank you for being our speaker this morning. You're very frank and honest with your answers and your opinions. And I probably think that some people may disagree or not agree, but at least we're here to have this open forum for that type of discussion. And certainly they can express themselves in many different ways as you have today. So thank you again. And certainly, I got probably another hour of questions here. Maybe we'll have you back in the future to go over those things because, obviously a lot revolves around the DA's office. So thank you for taking the time this morning.
You're welcome.
In conclusion, I'll just mention that we do have a number of upcoming programs. June 15th is almost here, which is the liberation date for California as far as most of the mandates or the restrictions that the state has put on California residents and businesses for occupancy and masking and physical distancing and things like that. So things are going to open up much more widely. We'll be going back to in-person, as I said at the beginning of the show. Hopefully we'll be having I think it's July 1st, Wake Up Newport meeting at the public library, which is always, it would have been a great way for our business owners and residents to actually meet Todd Spitzer, which is, I guess you can do if you go to the yoga studio on Jamboree, but we like to have him down at Wake Up Newport. So we don't want to mess up his chakras or his calm or whatever you do, your meditation. So, or your downward facing dog or whatever it is you do over there.
There you go, Steve.
Okay, I knew I did it. If I talk long enough, I usually hit the hammer on the So, but yeah, so Wake Up Newport, our next one will be July 1st. So just check our website, newportbeach.com. I don't have the speaker yet, but we always have great speakers as we've had today. Next Thursday, we have one of our economic updates that'll be done by Zoom. Chris Schwartz with the University of California, Palmer School of Business will be giving the update as he has over the last year. We've partnered with 28 other chambers of commerce for this one. So it's almost a countywide chamber event. So hopefully you'll sign up for that. And again, you can go to our website at newportbeach.com to sign up for that. And then 2 weeks from today, we'll be having our Government Affairs Committee meeting, also done by Zoom. And unfortunately, I'm blanking on who our speaker is. I think it's Chad Lefteris, actually. It is, right? Yeah. Chad Lefteris from University of California, Irvine Health. And he's going to be talking about some of the things that they're doing over there. So great. And the most important thing is our chamber mixer will be the fourth Thursday this month at Red O. So we hope to see you live and in person there at Red O. It's always a great place to have a drink, have some chips and salsa, and network. So please join us for all these upcoming events. If you're not a member of the Newport Beach Chamber of Commerce, you should be. I don't know why you're not. So go to our website again, and you can sign up under the membership tab. Thank you, Alberto. I look forward to working with you. You better bone up on that book that Rush gave you, because, you know, I can give as good as I get. Just remember that. So thank you all. We'll see you next time. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.